Hello everybody and welcome to Astrology. We're going to run through the September eclipse coming up, coming from the Pisces Virgo axis, and I'm going to run through, which I've never done on this channel before, I'm going to run through everyone's rising sign and how it'll affect their chart. So I've got the links below for astro.com for people who don't know their charts, so it might be worth just dialing it in if you're interested in this, to have a look at from your rising sign where this eclipse falls in your birth natal chart. Now we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces 15 degrees on the 7th of September, followed by the partial solar eclipse at 29 degrees Virgo on the 21st of September. And I personally find eclipses fascinating, and they always tend to reveal things that are hidden, right? So things that primarily sometimes aren't brought to our conscious awareness. So I really wanted to make the time out to do this video, to present this as best I can. And because I'm interested in obviously medical astrology as well, I think it's important to understand how these things can play out with, in terms of medical effects with these kind of things, right? Because obviously we've got to look to the body correspondence of Virgo and Pisces, right? But with particularly Pisces, we're dealing with the lymphatic system, the bloodstream, and the feet. And of course, we're dealing with like things like the etheric body, right? Which is our vital force, our vitality. And so sometimes with Piscean tendencies, we can have tendencies to leak prana, leak chi, and they're deeply going to affect our psyches, and more so working on that subconscious mind. And generally this Piscean eclipse, as it tends to loosen boundaries as Pisces does, we can tend to have a waking effect or a sleepy effect on the body. So at these times we can get tired around these eclipses. So I just wanted to point that out first, because I've done a lot of talks obviously on my channel on self-sold astrology and things like this, so I want to bring this into fruition here with regards to this Piscean energy, which can weaken the immune system. So has potential to, and it's going to particularly fall in certain houses that are probably going to have a stronger effect on that. Those being the houses of health, they will be the 1st, the 12th, and the 6th house. That's very important to pay attention to. And of course, I think primarily this eclipse will really affect people who have especially Piscean Virgo ascendant, descendant is going to be a major role. And of course, the IC and MC, which is the midheaven, so the 4th, the midheaven, and sorry, the 4th and the 10th house axis as well. So they're what they call the angles of the chart. So the angles of the chart are extremely important, and we can experience these quite deeply, actually. I just want to say too, obviously I'm basing this off whole signs houses, and I am going into I'm obviously not going into planetary connections and things like this, and because obviously I need to look at people's charts and things like this to see how eclipses actually really do play out at this period of time. But we can get general themes around the houses that it falls in, which can be quite significant. Okay, so we'll start off looking at Aries rising, and this eclipse axis is going to fall into the 12th and the 6th houses. So this is like the 6th house is about practicality and daily routines, service, and work routines, as well as 12th house Pisces. We'll start with this because around this eclipse time, we're going to have, it's going to deeply affect obviously what they call the 12th house, which can play out in a number of ways. It's connected to the mysteries, hidden things, secrets, retreats, ashrams, solitude, where it rules sleep, and also it rules things in the unconscious, things that are hidden enemies, secrets we may have, things like this. So I'd say for the Aries type, it can bring up the need for rest and solitude, and maybe it'll probe you into maybe unconscious patterns, or maybe some psychological issues that we've had that may come to the forefront that really need to be addressed at this time. We just can't really put it away anymore. So things like addictions or emotional boundaries can be really important. The hidden things in life, things that we hadn't faced before. And I would say that this kind of house is a great time, if we're going through a difficult time, actually to explore the mysteries that really Pisces represents. And this eclipse may stimulate your mind to do this, right? You may get interested in kind of subjects that you haven't thought so deeply about before. Things like maybe, say, tarot or magnetic healing, energetic healing, things like this. And ultimately, it may bring to the forefront some fears we've just had, which we just really need to address at this time, that have been hidden and been connected to our own self-undoing. So this could really come up at this time. And I think with the opposite, when we've had the opposite end of the scale, when we've got Virgo in this sign too, following up, because we've got to remember eclipses start with the lunar and then they're followed by the solar. So it's a duality kind of thing going on in 2 weeks. And they call that 2-week period what they call in between waves, when the Earth magnetic field actually is really, really highly unstable. So it's not a good time to do elective surgery and things like this from a medical perspective, because there's a high chance of things going wrong. But Virgo, speaking of surgery, is a lot to do with the sign of health, right? And the Aries axis is going to have that 6th house energies going on, and it's a 29th degree, and the 29th degree is actually a karmic degree. So there's something that needs to be kind of resolved or ended. And this can be karmic routines, I'd say, around jobs or health. So maybe we've been doing a job for so long, it's become so mundane, and it's at a critical point now where we think, Jesus, I can't stand this routine. I can't stand this daily routine. I need to change something. Or it can be to the point where we've just, because Virgo's the type who will work till they drop. So people in this house, particularly in their daily work life, can work themselves till they just drop and get extremely tired and feel like, God, I've neglected my health, which is the 12th house, 6th house axis, and I just can't, I have to change something now. Change something to do with endings in changes as routines, and possibly there could be karmic closure in relation to a job or a period of time that you have been looking into something and that you want to change. So, of course, this house is also the house of pets and connected to small animals. So maybe that there may be, if you have a pet, animal issue may come up that needs to be resolved at this time, and or maybe the health of your animal needs to be checked out, things like this. But I would say these are the 2 houses of health. The 12th house is to do with the psyche, 6th house is more to do with the body. And Virgo and Pisces do have this connection, right? Virgo's more psychic hygiene, right? Sanitizing the psyche. And I think this, for Aries rising, this is a really good time to do that. It's like the exploring the unconscious, and this could have happened, actually. This may have even pushed you to the point where you've worked so hard that you're to the point where you can burn out. You're forced to rest and go into solitude. And this is when we can start exploring these elements of our psyches that we don't really have privy to go to when we do work so hard. So let me know in the comments and see how you go with this eclipse. Okay, Taurus and Taurus rising. Your eclipse, the Taurus ascendant, the eclipse axis is going to fall through the 11th house and the 5th house. That being Pisces falling, the Piscean eclipse, the lunar eclipse falling into your 11th house, which has a lot to do with your imagination, wishes, a lot to do with friendships and friendship groups. So groups will be changing for people. There can be involvement in groups who actually need others, but there can also be a connection to wanting to probably connect more with, say, artistic groups that maybe stimulate your imagination, which is Pisces connected to. So maybe they can be musical groups. You get interested in some music, or that being also Pisces rules the word, poetry, this kind of thing. And it can be a lot to do with that energies around groups. How are your groups changing? You might be fed up with a certain social circle and now want to connect with people more along those artistic lines or spiritual lines and make more of a connection to that kind of thing, where you can actually explore this kind of thing. On the flip side of it, you could have social circles that are where people are connected to drugs, alcohol, social networks like that. Maybe a lot of your friends are on that wavelength with mental health issues, maybe unemployment, that kind of thing, where you might, maybe want to change or have enough of being around these kind of people as well, because there's always flip sides to these eclipses and things, how they play out. So you may have enough of having these dependent friends who are just more leeching your vitality, right? More like lower astral vampires, something like this, where if they can really leech your prana. And you may really notice this, the Taurus types having this eclipse fall in the 11th house. Get very susceptible to a form of vampirism that leeches your energies being around groups. But on the flip side, it's a good time to get interested in these kind of things, because the opposite end of this eclipse is falling into your 5th house in Virgo, which is a lot to do with new hobbies, creativities, theatre. It's a lot to do with partners, romance. And it could be an indicator being a 29th degree to start, or because the 5th house is deeply creative. So it's entrepreneurial as well, because traditionally it's actually ruled by Leo. So it's connected to that enterprise, in my opinion, and a little bit of wanting to in business. But there could be, for Taurus types, because the South Node does fall in that house, and there may be a karmic ending, maybe to a romantic relationship you've had that just felt like it wasn't working. Or second, on the other flip side, is you may have someone enter into your house. But either way, there's changes in creativities. It could even be pushing you to create a certain project at this time, or revisit old joys and loves that you've had in your creative intelligence that you just haven't pursued yet, and you're ready to bring out into the world and think, oh, okay, now will be the right time to do this. So yeah, this axis is going to be more connected to the Piscean type of surrender and balancing out that practicality type thing that's coming up. And really, it's probably a good time to explore that 5th house, really start drawing into the creativities. And it could be to do with children as well. Maybe some people are considering having children who have this access, and really thinking about this. And this eclipse may just stimulate people to do that as well for the Taurian ascendant. So we'll move on to Gemini. This eclipse is actually a big one for the Gemini, because we've got the private versus public life axis coming up, which is the 10th and the 4th house. So, possibly for the Gemini types with the Pisces eclipse in the 10th house, there can be career fluctuations, all emotional confusion around career, and a lot of things to do with reputation, and how we can actually get ourselves to get good recognition at this time. There can be a bit of a confusing time to actually realize what is it we actually really want, and it could stimulate maybe a different vocation, right? If you've had something that's really not serving your spiritual purpose, because Pisces is all about connecting to something greater than ourselves, right? And we may actually, it may stimulate a spiritual type of vocation, or one that requires a lot of compassion and empathy. And if we don't have that in our work life, it may stimulate us to change. And so it's an interesting one, this when it falls into the 10th house, because sometimes when it's there, right, it can also it can be a little bit of peak in our career as well, because sometimes, depending on that nodal axis and what it's accessing as well in terms of planetary configurations and what it's hitting. But I think there can be unreality around, or something. People may experience some leadership roles or leaders in their work life that aren't clear or coherent, and there can be issues with authority figures, and at work, because Pisces is all about deception and leaving people in a bit of a Neptunian haze. So I just think at this time for the Geminis, it could be quite a difficult time to suss out what it actually really is that they want to do, and I think you might just be like in the Hangman in the tarot. You may just have to hang around and sit with it for a period of time in terms of getting clearer about what it is we actually really want to do. Sometimes with this access, it can happen, particularly in the sign of Pisces. But either way, in the opposition of the solar eclipse in Virgo, 29 degrees, there could be some kind of domestic change go on, or you're going to have that battle between work life and public life, where maybe you feel like you may need to be at home more, but then you want to develop your career, and then it's difficult to do at this point in time. It can be a change around the home in terms of home improvements, like fixing things or doing deep cleaning, spring cleaning. Or you may realize that we need to build our home, or the home needs a fair bit of work, or it's needed work for a long time. And once this eclipse hits, you think, oh God, let's just do it. It also represents the parents, or ancestry and lineage and things like this. So there could be, the parents' health could be a little bit vulnerable. There could be a shift in the family dynamics. And so we may actually need to change residence actually for our work as well. So it's an interesting time, and it is definitely a time of change on that front for the Gemini rising. We have Cancer rising, and this eclipse axis is going to fall through the 9th and 3rd house. 9th house is all about the Pisces. It's going to hit the 9th house eclipse, and it's all about open knowledge. So this is a lot to do with stimulating growth and education, spiritual education, or maybe you're going to have long journeys, or to take a trip that overseas, spiritual pilgrimage or a sacred mission. And it can be a trip where it requires maybe a lot of solitude and retreat as well. But I think philosophies will change. Your own personal philosophies can change at this time, stimulating things like love and compassion. You may even get potentially even more follow a religion, or I would say more so a philosophy of some kind that really opens your mind up to universal concepts at this time. It's also connected to education. So you may want to take higher education at this time and get stimulated to do it. And it may actually, some may find that they take up a study where they do need to travel overseas and actually really just do this. And they think, okay, I'll take it on. So, and the opposite of that is we have Virgo in the third house, and the solar eclipse is third house is, again, it's I look at this axis as the ninth house higher mind, the third house the lower, and it's connected to maybe workshops and shorter type courses, things like this. It's also connected obviously to siblings, neighbors, area of thought and study, right? And so things that require skills and acquisitions, you may really want to do or stimulate, or maybe you actually are doing some kind of course or short course, and then you really need to finish this, some kind of training to access the other opposite of that sign that's going to enable us to get that higher degree and really open up doorways for yourself on that level. But it's the third house is a thinking house as well, but it's also the house of short journeys and things like this. So this may disrupt maybe your daily routines around town and this kind of things. There might be changes in that local network, which the third house is all about as well. So there could be big shifts in that kind of area. So this is more of a I think for the Cancer rising, it's more of a access to the mind and learning, and possibly even finishing off some long-term studies that we haven't, or getting open to explore new ones. So we've got the Leo and Leo rising here going on with this eclipse, and it's going to affect the 8th house and the 2nd house axis. This has a lot to do with your personal resources and sharing with someone else's, which is the 8th house. So the Piscean eclipse is going to hit the 8th house of shared resources, death and taxes. But it's not just about that too. It's also about deep, intimate bonds and wanting to connect deeply with another, because when we enter a relationship, we need to, this is the house that's going to say, it's one thing to be in love, but then this is the house that's like, okay, so how are we going to do things? How can we make this practical, right? It's about sharing resources. Whereas the 2nd house is about having your own resources. The 8th house is about opening up and going, okay, how are we going to make this work? And it can also be the houses of transition, as in death and other people's illnesses. I think this house is deeply affected for psychic or psychological influences, vulnerability. There can be an ending or a release with someone we've been emotionally tied to, or maybe explore the issues around it. Or maybe the issues will come up. How can we how are we going to create and make our relationship work between us on a practical level in terms of sharing resources? But also it can stir up a lot of unreleased psychological issues that really need to be addressed at this time in order for you to be able to make other commitments in life. But then also it's the houses of inheritances, wills, and finances as well, in terms of joint, or if you're getting an inheritance, then there could be some misunderstandings around this, or some confusion around wills or inheritance. Maybe some things aren't clear. If someone passes and, this kind of thing, there can be a nebula confusion a nebulousness, can't say the word, around that. Maybe something's left you hanging. But on the opposite spectrum, we've got Virgo in the second house, which is a house of self-worth and how we value ourselves. And, you know, when the solar eclipse falls there, then there can be this more emphasis on maybe reevaluating our values, our self-worth. Maybe we need to check in with our banking and financial issues and how we can improve these, right? Maybe we need to get a little bit more anal to the detail about how we've been managing our money and things like this. And also can connect to food and diet, and actually dental problems connect with that house as well. And income. Maybe we really need to address the bad habits or spending habits we've had with money and take a closer look at these. But I think with this access, it's more about what are my own personal values and how am I able to make it work with someone else. Maybe these issues can come up for some people on this level. But yeah, this is, I find the 8th house access with the second one. The 8th house is it's a deep house, and it's one that when a lunar eclipse hits there, then it's going to make us look into and become more sensitive. Particularly, this is another house where we become more sensitive to our own psyche and our own psychological needs. Now we have the Virgo rising for this ascendant. This eclipse axis is going to access the 7th and the 1st house. The Piscean lunar eclipse landing in the 7th. There can be big changes in professional relationships. You may need to take care of dependents and nurse others, or duty towards others in needs. And there could also be a time too where we need to pay attention to our relationships and look at what's not being addressed. We could look at our relationships in terms of what's not serving us in our relationship, or what's come up that's not really being authentic, that really needs to be addressed. But it's certainly a time of where we could potentially need to take care of someone, a dependent. We may need to have to nurse others. And it's definitely a time where if things haven't been going right in our relationship, it's going to be a time where we're going to have to not be able to hide from it anymore and really need to bring it out into the open to be able to look at how this actually really serves us as a couple. That doesn't mean things are going to end. It just means things just need a good hard look, because the opposite of it is Virgo being in the 1st house, which is a house of the body, the appearance or the masks, the persona, what we wear out into the world. And so it's a time where we need to pay attention to ourselves, right? Otherwise we can get fatigued. And because Virgo is a sign of service, we have a tendency not to say no to people. So I think this eclipse axis really is connecting to boundaries and what our boundaries are. And I think the solar eclipse hitting 2 weeks later is going to connect into, we're going to need to pay attention to our bodies, our diet, our physical level, right? Because the 1st house is one of the houses of health connected to the body. And then also Virgo's in connected to liver, pancreas, and intestines. So we're going to have to pay attention to those particular organs as well. And it may be a time where we have been overworked and overburdened, because sometimes with Virgo ascendants, right, it's very hard for them to say no, because Virgo is the sign of service. It loves to serve others, naturally, by nature. So it may be a time for when we need to take a step back. We've been relying too heavily on others and looking after others and serving others, especially in this relationship axis, and that can be connected to a partner. You've been so overemphasized in looking into and looking after your partner's needs and completely neglecting your own. And this eclipse could stimulate you to, hang on a minute, I need to rest, regroup, look after myself, and take care of myself on that level. And very important at this time for the Virgo ascendant, because this is going to be more of a difficult time. I think this is the ones where we really, really do need to pay attention to our health and how it's playing out. And, you know, eclipses can bring a lot of fatigue, especially on this axis. So I think the Virgos are definitely going to be, the Virgos ascendant are going to be feeling it really in the body around this time. So really, really pay attention to it. Have the treatments that balance you out, body work, things like this. You can work on the body, acupuncture, massage, whatever it is, but have the time to rest and recharge. And that will give you a clear understanding of how things are going to play out within your relationships and your partnerships. We've got the Libra rising here, and the eclipse axis, the lunar eclipse in Pisces, falls into the 6th, and the solar eclipse Virgo falls into the 12th. Now, this is obviously like the Aries, but the opposite way around. The Aries ascendant, opposite way around, affecting the 12th and the 6th. However, the Pisces eclipse this time is going to fall into the 6th house. And so lunar eclipses can bring endings, as they can do. And this could be around a work routine that just hasn't served you, and it's time to leave. There can be a lot of ups and downs. It can be about releasing old toxic work patterns, because Libra is definitely the sign that likes to please. So it can be the pleasing sign to the point where you completely ignore your own needs as well. Like the book, The Disease to Please. It's not good. And there may be something that comes into your consciousness around that, dealing with your daily routines at works and other colleagues and things like this that come up, and maybe possibly even obviously affect your health, because this is a house too where health could be a problem when you don't, particularly if you're working in a toxic work environment and there's a lot of things going on that aren't good. It can really affect you, and especially the psyches, because Pisces tends to really deal with that. But, you know, if you don't address the work problem, where if you are prone to overdoing, then it could affect obviously your immune system, because Pisces is connected to that, as well as the lymphatic system. And of course, it's a lot to do with the blood and the quality of blood as well. So, and this, you know, obviously this eclipse can affect sleep patterns as well. But so worse yet is probably be careful, especially around medication at this time if some people are on it, because sometimes you can absorb the toxicity of the drugs a lot quicker, because Pisces deeply affects drugs and alcohol, rules pharmaceutical drugs and things like this. And obviously, you know, if you've got foot problems, because Pisces rules the feet, then I would avoid surgery at this time. But so I think, you know, it's probably, this eclipse will be pointing to you to have solid boundaries at work, or psychic boundaries. And you know, with the eclipse in Pisces in this house, you can be more prone to picking up atmospheric energies at work, which can make you sick. So probably what I would recommend with this kind of access is to tighten the noose, particularly with anything to do with Pisces. And it's really, really beneficial, like the South Node is indicating in Virgo, in the 12th house, is to connect to exercises like Tai Chi, Qigong, pranic healing, this kind of thing, which can help you really, really tighten the etheric body up so you don't prone to psychic attack, as they say. And sometimes the Libran type, can obviously at this time, the Libran ascendant will also may feel they really do need quiet time, because if you've been overworking and overdoing, like the sixth house can, then it's going to force you into rest and solitude as well. But it can be a good time to do a karmic cleanse with the South Node in the 12th house, and psychic cleanse or psychological cleanse the inner bodies is a really good time to do this kind of work. And you may need to go away into a retreat to do this, have the quiet space with rest and solitude to make the time out to actually go and do this. Or, it can be a great time of self-purification with the South Node in Virgo in the 12th. And then also some people may be called to do some volunteer work, or, go over into an ashram somewhere, because the 12th house does rule foreign lands as well, to go and connect and want to retreat and do this, in order to open new doors of cleansing that needs to happen through this house access, the 12th and the 6th. So I think for the Libran types, this is a good time to do that. Scorpio rising. The eclipse falls into the 5th house, the house of joy. You've got Pisces in the 5th eclipse, followed by 2 weeks later the Virgo eclipse in the 11th, at the opposite end of the spectrum. So lunar eclipses are about endings, so there could be endings of, relationships, or turning points in relationships where, you've been romantic with someone for a period of time, and then all of a sudden you want to know where it's going to head. Are we going to commit more, or are we going to go our separate ways? It can be a lot to do. It's the house of joy, the 5th, so it can be a time of maybe people realize that, God, I've had no joy in my life at the moment, and eclipse falling in here is like, okay, I'm going to make time out to have some time with my children, because the 5th house is about children. It can be a turning point for some people who have children on some level. But relationships that haven't been defined or tested, relationships, like I was saying before, that are undefined will be tested at this point. But it's the house of mysteries, and secrets can happen, right? Obviously, because the Pisces reveals these kind of things. The Pisces eclipse is about the mysteries, secrets. Secrets may come up around your children that you don't aware of. Secret love affairs. But also it's the house of drama, right? Because traditionally it's ruled by Leo, so a lot of people might get interested in this eclipse to become more artistic, go to the arts, go to the theatre, maybe start acting or do something creative, start playing some music. Some people may find new hobbies at this time, right? As well, to do with that Piscean type of thing. And so with the flip side of that, it's interesting because it's the 11th house. So the 11th and the 5th house, it's that balance between joy and the collective. The 11th house does have an affinity with the collective, because traditionally it's ruled by Aquarius, which rules humanity. It's the sign of humanity. So another way of looking at it is the collective. So there's going to be, maybe it's a karmic degree, 29th degree, so maybe some work groups or administrations or friends we've outgrown friendship groups, and it's time to move on. And then also, we may be forced to, at this time, because it's about hopes and wishes, it might be a point where we're thinking, God, what are my long-term goals? What are my visions? What are my hopes? What are my wishes? I need to re-examine these things. I've kind of forgot what these, I need to redefine these at this point of time. Are your goals or your social connections helping you grow? These kind of issues can come up with this eclipse access. And it's that point between the joy and the collective. Fifth house all about joy, how we find our inner child, right? It's connected to the fifth house as well. This kind of thing can come out. But I think it's important to be creative, because sometimes when we get too serious with the eclipses and Pisces falling into that house, it's a good opportunity maybe to awaken these abilities that I guess a lot of time, if we're being too more Virgo and connected to work and routine, then we lose touch with that creative side that's important. It brings out our inner child, our happiness, the house of joy, the love, opening our hearts, this kind of thing. So we've got Sagittarius rising here, and this is another axis to a point where we're challenged between home and career, but in the opposite way of the Gemini rising, where our Piscean eclipse is going to fall into our fourth house as opposed to our 10th, like I was saying before. So it's going to be home and career. There's going to be something about the Sag rising that maybe some family secrets can get revealed. There could be a family benevolence or generosity or inheritance come in. There can be a lot of compassion and generosity around the home, the family home. There may be something comes up that we need to work with boundaries in the home. There can be boundary issues, and which can affect obviously everyone in the home. There can also be maybe issues to do with emotional depression, confusion, maybe around someone in the family that needs to be addressed. It can all about clearing maybe ancestral baggage from the past, because the fourth house is about that. The fourth house is all about, it's the basement of the chart, it's the psyches. It's one of the really deep houses where we find things, along with the 12th and 8th, but I think the 4th is definitely, I think all those houses are connected to the water element, so they're connected to the psyche, and the 4th house is the basement of the being. So we can find a lot of connections, maybe even genetic conditions connected to family lineage that may be affecting us, that may come up at this point in time. And the flip side of the axis is the 29 degrees Virgo in the solar eclipse in the 10th house, which could indicate it's a karmic degree. So maybe there's some resolution coming in with work where it's a turning point in career, or we've been working in a job to the point where we realize, God, I really don't think I can do this anymore. I need to change something. Or our karmic roles are playing out through the career. It can be to do with leaderships or authorities. But overall, the working goal is going to be defined. It's going to come to a critical point where what is my vocational direction, and do I really want to leave, or do I want to stay, or it's a time where I really need to evaluate my career goals. And maybe ask the obvious question, what do I really want to be known for? These kind of questions can really come up, particularly if we're not happy with how things are going. If things are working out well in terms of our professional employment, then it just can be a turning point where we may actually even get some, it could be even thrown into a leadership role, because I look at the 29th degree as something karmic, something's coming our way. So this can be, it's going to be interesting for the Sag types to see how that plays out on the vocational level. So we've got the Capricorn rising here, and the eclipse axis is going through the 3rd and 9th house, which is the axis of thinking. So the Pisces is in the third house, a lot to do with how we take in information and learn, is going to come up at this time. And maybe even, Capricorn's an extremely practical sign, and what we see is what we get. It's all about practical reality, practical thinking, practical thought, structure, show me the facts. And with a Piscean eclipse moving into that third house, our mental states are most likely going to shift. That can be into maybe a state of confusion around, or changes in the way we're thinking from that practical way into more of a poetic or a mystical. Maybe we start getting interested in these kind of things. The third house, maybe we're going to take short courses in this. And it's all about, I guess, how we learn. It's learning to change through learning. So what we learn is going to change us on a different level from what we have actually really been as before in the past. So maybe you may do things like dream journaling. There can be breaks and changes in communication. Another thing is it's all about writing projects and things like this, social media, writing, and maybe there's some project that you've been working on that's going to come out. Either way, it's all about that learning access, where the Virgo sign eclipse, the solar eclipse, is falling into the 9th house. So, I mean, this could it could in some way on another level open to that higher vision as well. And I think for the Capricorn types, they're going to be taken out of their comfort zones when it comes to certain subjects that come this way as well. So it'll be an interesting challenge for them, I think, at this time, for you guys at this time. And maybe the 29th degree in the 9th house is a completion. So maybe you actually have been doing some higher learning and higher study, and now it's just coming to a complete completion now, and you're finishing something. But and it may actually possibly even take you traveling, potentially. But I think for the Capricorn ascendant, this eclipse is just going to be a big shifts in how we think, and it's going to really play out for you guys on that mental level. So for this Aquarius rising, we've got the Piscean eclipse in the 2nd, and then the Virgo in the 8th. So this is really about knowing your worth, self-worth, and your financial stability. So with the Pisces creating a little bit of, firstly, when the nodes are, when the eclipse comes here, it can also there can be ups and downs in income, windfalls, sudden loss, sudden winnings with money, that maybe you could potentially, with Pisces going through this house, which can happen, you tend to feel like you're worthless or don't know your worth. So maybe an issue can come to a head where you feel like, hang on a minute, my self-esteem has got to a point now where I really want to, change, start valuing myself more, maybe even ask for a pay rise. These kind of things can come up, but these are the house of knowing your worth, your finance, how you want to manifest, right, wealth. These kind of issues can come up at this time. Self-worth, undervaluing yourself is a really key one for this one. It's really important because that 2nd house forces us to introspect into how we value ourselves. And maybe the Piscean eclipse may stimulate us to become really sensitive to that and really want to, really pay attention to it, because the whole self-esteem and how we value ourselves is obviously reflected in our finances, and our financial stability. Now, on the flip side, with the South Node in Virgo, we can have obviously the death, the taxes, the inheritance is connected to that. There can be urgent changes, really, because it's the karmic degree. The 29th degree always makes us want to do maybe things or complete something. Something needs to be completed. But there can be urgent changes, new financial partnerships at this time. We may realize that we've got these debts, right? And God, it comes to the point with this eclipse where it's the karmic degree, like I said. So I thought, God, you may just have to pay something. Something comes up, and you're just going to have to just go, God, we're going to have to pull together and pay this debt. But the 8th house also has a lot to do with trust and vulnerability, and maybe we've got a business project going on there. We've just been resistant to join in with someone and join our finances with them. And might be a point where we think, God, I'm just going to have to progress. And for us to expand, we're going to have to just throw in our money and join this. So investing on that level as well. Or we can find out with that South Node in Virgo too, because that 8th house is another house of the psyche, psychological work, that there's some inner work that we need to do to address certain deeper issues in connection with our joint resources in partnerships, because the 8th house is all about other people's money, not ours. And we need to, I need to explore this to be able to merge more deeply with someone. To have a deeper connection, we need to explore that 8th house with someone to be able to share. And sharing resources is just not material things. It's also a lot to do with, obviously, our intimacy and intimacy connections, right? Intimacy is about sharing how we feel, how we trust in others, not being afraid of what we actually want to talk about with someone. Sharing our deeper innermost feelings around things, or our fears, our anxieties, and this kind of things. This is what creates strength and bonds with others, and this is really important. And that could come to a head at this time for the Aquarius ascendant. So we have the Pisces ascendant. This is another 1st and 7th house access, and this is your eclipse, Pisces ascendant. This is like the home ground. This is hitting your ascendant right away, and it can create it's definitely one thing it is going to affect is the physical body, and it's going to affect your appearance, your magnetic appeal to others, opportunities to bless, comfort, or soothe others. It can make you in some way, maybe you're more aware or dependent on others. And the physical, but also it's a lot to do with the chi force, right? Because we've got to remember too, Pisces, like I said before, is connected to the ethereal. So the chi, the prana. So it's important to really harness those boundaries, and particularly the Pisces, because Pisces has a lot to do with the mental body as well. But in this case, it's affecting the physical body. So there can be lymph problems, swellings, problems with the feet, and obviously the immune system, again, I would be paying very close attention to around this eclipse. But also, as well as mental health, psychic hygiene, really, really important. So there can be, because the Piscean eclipse can create a lot of confusion around things generally. So it's important to deal with these mental confusions, these depressions, the apathy, right? Really, really important. But I would just pay particularly attention to this of the Piscean ascendant, because, it's boundaries and boundary problems. And the people why Pisces is connected to alcoholism and drugs is because drugs and alcohol dissolve boundaries. They make us want to disappear and to submerge into something greater than ourselves. Really, drugs and alcohol are a womb metaphor psychologically, which means we just want to retreat back into the womb, into bliss, instead of being into the cold, harsh reality that the planet Saturn actually represents archetypally. But Pisces is the opposite. So, and that being said, we have the Virgo South Node in the 7th house at a 29 degrees solar eclipse. And this can be to do with the other significant other in your life. Your marriage, your partnership, your partner's health or your partner's job. Is it good? Is it, it can be the axis where your partner can become more dependent on you for some reason. Maybe the Virgo 29 degrees, the partner may lose the job because it's about an ending. And, you may need your support at this time. Yeah, and it could be maybe something around the relationship that needs to come to a head and to be addressed. But it also can influence your professional relationships, like with your psychologist if you're seeing one, or naturopath, something like this. You just really need to watch your outflow, what you're giving and putting out, particularly to your partner at this point in time, may become far more draining for you. So you may need a lot more sleep to recuperate and rebuild. Because Pisces, the Virgo axis can be very sleepy time. And then of course, with this aspect with your partner in the South Node can definitely drain you. It's another, you may find your partner a little bit vampiristic. So I would say for this type of the Piscean ascendant with the Virgo Piscean Virgo axis, that you need to develop very strong self-protection, good psychic boundaries. And I would say probably the best way to do this is to really get into your body. Get into the physical body as best you can, because it'll help ground you and tighten the etheric noose where you're more prone to those pranic leaks of, losing the chi, losing the vitality. So important at this time to rest. And that's it for, this is the first time I've done this rising sign type stuff, which a lot of people are doing on YouTube, but I find the eclipses very, very important to pay attention. And if you would like more of a deeper understanding of this, of course you need a personal chart, which I do. I do personal charts for people, so definitely jump in. If you would like, you can visit my website www.astropillars.com.au, or you can contact me on the socials. I'm on Instagram, and I've also started a Substack channel as well, so for people interested in that, please jump in and we can get right into all of the I'm doing my self-sold astrology one I've cleaned up and I've put it over there, and I'm doing a lot of different articles on a lot of different subjects to do with astrology, the esoteric, and the mysteries of life. And yeah, join, and hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do, please subscribe. I really appreciate the subscriptions I had. So I'm looking to grow the channel now and trying to be a little bit more consistent, but I'm doing my best at the moment. So thanks for listening.